These homeowners say they had their properties on the whiteboard too. Here are their allegations.
I lived in my home for 10 years and it was wrongfully taken from me.
My home was stolen from me.
Identity theft. I have asked for due process in DeKalb County, Georgia Superior Court.
My house that has been paid for since 1979 was stolen from me.
And my home of nearly 10 years was stolen from me by fraudulent foreclosure practices.
They all tell us their cases are similar to Eric Clark's. We first introduced you to the father last fall. He got a letter on his door that his home had been sold out from under him at a foreclosure auction. He claimed in a police report that someone took out a fraudulent second loan on his home, forging his signature. These homeowners say they had their properties on the whiteboard too. Here are their allegations.
I lived in my home for 10 years and it was
Welcome, everyone. We have Sarah Danetta Hicks, the chair of the Stone Mountain Lithonia Alumni Chapter of Economic Development, who will now bring you your welcome.
Good evening, community leaders. We are so excited to have you tonight for Deceptive Deeds, all about mortgage fraud and identity theft. Tonight, we asked you to share and care this important message. We want you to tag your friends. We want you to engage and communicate with us through the chat feature with questions you have for these experts that's coming tonight. We're excited to have you. And I want to tell you that we're thankful that you're here, and we want to talk about how important economic status is as it relates to economic development, especially as it relates to this deceptive deeds conversation here in the marketplace. We encourage each of our listeners to share and tag it, as again, I shared earlier. And one of my most important duties, very honored to do this, is to introduce tonight our esteemed president, Candace Hall Simon. Madam President.
Good evening. Good evening, Sora Hicks. Good evening, family and friends who are joining this evening. We are honored to have you be with us online for this very important conversation. The reason that we're here tonight, this was actually birthed out of a very unfortunate situation involving one of our very own members. She too was the victim of mortgage fraud, and many of us learned about some of these deceptive practices as a result of her story. Our soror, Carolyn Hightower, is 75 years old. She had been living in her home for well over 20 years, closer to 30 years, in fact. And someone erroneously took out a second mortgage, or seemingly took out a second mortgage on her home. And essentially had her moved out of her home. And so she is continuing to fight that legal battle. We know that it's going to be a long journey for her. And because of what she went through, we knew that it was important and imperative that we share information with the community about this horrible situation so that others are not caught unaware. And we want to make sure that we can give you as many resources and as much information as possible so that you can help protect yourself from a similar fate. So we're so grateful to have our esteemed panelists who are going to share their expertise with you and give you tips and insights from their perspectives. And I'm also appreciative of our Economic Development Chair, Danetta Hicks, our Social Action Chair, Johnny Cruz Craig, and our Second Vice President, Shannon McCoy, for having the vision to come together and to put this program together because they knew how important it was. I'd also like to acknowledge First Vice President Sonia Strider, who has been instrumental in assisting with this program as well. So thank you so much to all of you who are here. We look forward to the information and learning a lot this evening. So again, thank you for being here. And Sora Danetta Hicks, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Madam President. So now we would like to show you a video of a victim of mortgage fraud and identity theft.
Right now, a 77-year-old man is in jail for refusing to leave his home. He claims someone stole it from him. You can see the family's belongings all over the yard now, and they reached out to Clark Howard's Consumer Action Center for help. Investigative reporter Ashley Lincoln is live outside the home in DeKalb County. Ashley, this just does not make sense, but real estate attorneys say this type of theft is on the rise.
Sad to say it is, Linda. I mean, this family, they've been out here all day trying to salvage whatever they can. We're talking about more than 20 years worth of items on their lawn. They're trying to stuff it in this U-Haul truck. Now, housing advocates say this type of theft is easy because courts don't require people to show ID when modifying this type of paperwork.
This guy just come out of nowhere saying he purchased our home and just took our home.
It's a tactic real estate attorneys say they're starting to see all too often.
It's not fair.
Attorney Richard Alembic says they're called wrongful foreclosures or forged deeds. It's when thieves use forged documents to gain ownership of unaware homeowners' properties.
There's no people's court for challenging a wrongful foreclosure or forged deed. So that's the fundamental problem.
I just can't believe that this is happening.
Shameen Allman says she and her 77-year-old husband were forced out of their Stone Mountain home of more than 20 years.
I don't know how to feel right now. I'm just scared.
Allman's 77-year-old husband was arrested for refusing to leave the property.
Very upsetting to see my husband in handcuffs at 77 years old and placed in the car because he didn't want to leave his home.
She says she and her husband began getting letters in the mail saying they took out a second mortgage, something she says neither of them did.
We don't have no more mortgage.
And by Tuesday, this man told him he was the owner and purchased the home from a foreclosure.
Hey, it's Ashley with Channel 2 News.
The current owner ran inside after spotting our camera and wouldn't answer any of my questions. He eventually did come out.
Can you answer our questions?
No questions. You get out.
Do you own the property?
Get out.
How did you acquire this property?
Alembic says it's not uncommon for judges to rule against homeowners even after proving a wrongful foreclosure.
It's a big problem nowadays because of the fact that e-filing e-recording of deeds is so easy now that it's very easy to record forged deeds.
He says this is due to outdated state law resulting in limited abilities within the magistrate system involving dispossessory hearings.
It's designed to just make dispossessories efficient, not necessarily fair.
And the couple says they did file for bankruptcy because they thought it would protect their property. Advocates say, hey, if you're in situations like this, the best thing to do is to contact an attorney because this type of law is very difficult to navigate on your own. In the meantime, Mrs. Allman says she has nowhere to go and will have to sleep in her car tonight. Reporting live in Stone Mountain, Ashley Lincoln, Channel 2 Action News.
Thank you for sharing these heart-wrenching stories. The alarming thing is that these things are not isolated stories. In fact, it happens very often. We are here tonight to bring awareness to deed fraud and identity theft. Knowledge is power, my friends, my community. And we bring awareness. We ask you to aim to educate on how you will know if you've been a victim, as well as share tips and tools, and we will provide resources on how to protect yourself. So now we have another story to share with you of another victim of identity theft and mortgage fraud.
5 Metro Atlanta families coming home to a notice saying their home is no longer theirs.
Our Atlanta News First investigation, stolen home finds houses are being sold without the owners even knowing it happened. Atlanta News First investigator Sierra Cummings is live at 5 outside the DeKalb County Courthouse for us. So Sierra, you're learning there is little oversight for property fraud here in Georgia.
Yeah, stealing a home may not be as hard as you think. That's according to the experts. It usually starts with some kind of forged paperwork, like a fake deed or a fraudulent loan. And in those cases, the home ends up wrongfully foreclosed. And we found it can happen in Georgia often because our foreclosure process in this state has little government oversight.
The whiteboard, the markers, the instructors. This is no classroom, but there's a lot that can be learned here at the DeKalb County foreclosure auction.
$146,000. 147. Last and final call for $190,000.
But they have to tender funds in full once they purchase, so they'll have the money on them.
Although on the front steps of the courthouse, the bidding process is not run by government or any state official. It's a private company called auction.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Staff here have no role in investigating whether a home should or should not be on the foreclosure auction. It works like this. If a homeowner repeatedly doesn't pay their mortgage loan, the loan will default, the debt will rise. And if the homeowner and bank don't agree on a repayment plan, the bank informs the foreclosure agency to put the property up for auction.
132, gotta be free. 133.
10 homes were on the list this time, but in the months before, these homeowners say they had their properties on the whiteboard too. Here are their allegations.
I lived in my home for 10 years and it was wrongfully taken from me.
My home was stolen from me.
Identity theft. I have asked for due process in DeKalb County, Georgia Superior Court.
My house that has been paid for since 1979 was stolen from me.
And my home of nearly 10 years was stolen from me by fraudulent foreclosure practices.
They all tell us their cases are similar to Eric Clark's. We first introduced you to the father last fall. He got a letter on his door that his home had been sold out from under him at a foreclosure auction. He claimed in a police report that someone took out a fraudulent second loan on his home, forging his signature. The father never paid the loan because he says he didn't know about it. What's more, he accuses fraudsters of also filing fake deeds on his property, an issue county clerks say is common because under current Georgia law, to file paperwork in the clerk's office, you don't need proof of identification.
It's harder to cash a $5 check at a bank than it is to record a deed that could steal the title to someone's home that they've worked for decades to build up equity in.
Attorney Rick Allenbeck fights cases of deed theft, wrongful foreclosures, fraudulent loans, the main ingredients in the recipe for real estate fraud.
What makes it easy for them to be able to do the fraudulent loan?
I mean, if I really wanted to, I could get your social security number and all your private information, you know, have people who can get that. I mean, I wouldn't do it because, like,
it's illegal.
It's illegal.
The 30-year veteran of law argues property fraud leading to wrongful foreclosures is rampant in Georgia because it's a non-judicial state. The courts only get involved after a lawsuit is filed. He believes the court should oversee the entire process from the beginning. For instance, if any bank or debtor wants to foreclose, they must go to court to prove why.
Where there's some judicial supervision, it's inherently more fair.
$145,000.
While real estate lobbyists seek efficiency in property sales, attorneys like Allenbeck says slowing down the process with more safeguards and verification steps from the deed filing to loans could stop stolen homes.
People have a lot of stuff getting thrown at them every day. How to get to work, how to get my kids fed or get them lunch. There's so much coming at people these days. But if it happens to you, then it's a life-altering event.
It can take years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to resolve a case like this one. But we have a tip for you. You can sign up your property on something called the Property Fraud Registry. It's statewide. Now, here's the thing. It doesn't stop the fraud from happening, but it gets you ahead of it so you can be largely in front of it before it's too late. We're going to walk you through that entire process coming up here at 6 o'clock. But you can find our entire investigation on AtlantaNewsFirst.com. At the DeKalb County Courthouse, I'm Sierra Cummings, Atlanta.
We have seen and heard what's going on as it relates to identity theft and mortgage fraud. I would like to now introduce our subject matter experts and panelists that will be here with us tonight. I start with Dr. Angela Washington with Washington Security Consulting.
Good evening.
Dr. Washington, can you tell a little bit about yourself and why you're here tonight?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Angela Washington. I am the CEO and owner of Washington Security Consulting. I'm also a 17-year law enforcement veteran, currently holding the position of lieutenant here at a local law enforcement agency in metropolitan Atlanta. Tonight, I have provided an identity theft resource booklet from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. This booklet contains information on minimizing your risk so you don't become a victim of identity theft, the first 3 steps you should take if you become a victim, and it also provides information on various types of fraud that you can work to prevent yourself from becoming a victim of.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. I would next like to introduce Debra DeBerry, correction. This is Madam Clerk, Superior Court of DeKalb County.
Hi, yes, I'm Debra DeBerry, Clerk of Superior Court, and I want to talk about deed, since all deeds are recorded with me, and how we can protect our property.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We appreciate you having you tonight. Next, I would like to present Breana Curry with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta.
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name is Breana Curry. I am a certified financial health counselor and a certified credit counselor, and also a program manager for the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. So I'm happy to be here to discuss this subject.
Welcome. And next we'll have Stephanie Singleton, Regional Information Security Officer of North America for the Coca-Cola Company.
Good evening. Thank you for saying that mouthful, Sora Hicks. As Danetta mentioned, I'm Stephanie Singleton. I've got over 20 years of information security and cybersecurity experience. Prior Air Force veteran, so I've seen a lot of instances and a lot of different variations of cybercrime. So I'm excited to be here tonight to talk about this very critical and rising content, that is seeing its way throughout not only our area in the Atlanta area, but nationwide. So thank you.
Thank you. And we have Jason Duff, Senior Mortgage Loan Originator with Ameris Bank.
Yes, hello, good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here, ladies of Delta Sigma Theta sorority. Yes, I am a senior loan originator with Ameris Bank. I've been with Ameris for 6 years this year, and my contributions are, of course, my perspective as a retail mortgage banker, and definitely wanted to bring awareness as well as knowledge to this, unfortunate situation we're having to address tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Duff. We appreciate you tonight. So let's get started with our panelists because we have a little time, and so we want to make sure we maximize our FAQs in the end. So I have, Madam Clerk, a question to you, and thank you for joining us tonight. What is the eviction process? And with that, the serving period before a homeowner is to be set out of their property. Madam Clerk, you're muted.
Oh, let's see.
There you go. We can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can.
Can you hear me? Okay, I apologize. I had a conflict in schedule tonight and couldn't be more present. I don't handle, I'm in Superior Court. We do not handle evictions, but there is a lot that happens before the eviction process. And we are, I hear both deed theft and identity fraud. And I did want to separate the two because it's not always and oftentimes not necessarily deed identity theft that is involved with deed fraud. As the newscaster mentioned, it's true in the state of Georgia. You do not have to uh, there is no law requiring any identification to transfer title on a deed. And so that's problem number one. I have required it in DeKalb, but it only works when the citizen presents at the front counter. When and we do, and we have made we have prosecuted because we were able to capture their driver's license. But since there is not a law requiring me, I have no law to stand on to reject a deed when everything else is in place. I began working with the FBI back in 2008 when we recognized some that looked problematic, but if it's not within the law, I have to go ahead and report it. But what happens and why in some instances it is not identity theft, a person can come in, we go after the notaries in these situations. So a person prepares a new deed in their own name, transferring title from a person that did not have anything to do with it, did not agree to sell their property. They just are fraudulently, I'm gonna have to put my phone down. They are fraudulently signing a deed over to themselves. And so once they do that, and usually the notary, and we have prosecuted many notaries on this, and this is where we can go back and potentially catch them. That's so that's one way. But what happens is once that individual transfers title in their name, it's their name. They don't have to assume your identity. That property is now showing their property as if you conveyed title to them. So then they go out and secure a second mortgage, a loan, use it as collateral. And once they get the loan, so they're getting a loan in their own name. And that is the problematic part for mortgage companies, lenders, banks, even on student loans. And so as soon as they get the money, they never pay it back 3-4 months later. The loan goes into default and the people come to the door and evict you. Now the eviction process, and they were right, we believe that if the law but there are specific laws that magistrates go through in the dispossessory process, but in deed theft, mortgage fraud is one thing where it does involve identity theft. But in these cases, when they fraudulently transfer title, it is now in their own name. And so that happens by them simply forging the original owner's signature on the transfer of title and filing a new deed. And that's when the property, either the loan that the fraudster took out, then that and defaults on it, but they come back and get the homeowner. There are so many components to this. And as I think the attorney or someone on a news program mentioned, Georgia is a non-judicial state. So there are no hearings for foreclosures, a bank, and for the most part, judges do side with mortgage lenders and bankers. They feel like they're always right. And this is a homeowner trying to beat the system. The system is, now I sued banks, Mears, Fannie and Freddie several years ago because they didn't file new assignments when they were bundling properties and selling them. And those notaries never notarized a homeowner. Homeowners were confused if they took a mortgage out with Countrywide. Well, we heard on the news that Bank of America bought Countrywide and all its debt and paper, but there was no assignment recorded. So when they call me and say, hey, I got a letter from Bank of America that says I owe them money, who do I owe? Well, on their security deed, it still shows Countrywide. Now I can tell them, I heard on the news, Bank of America bought all of Countrywide, but the official record of the court shows that you owe Countrywide and not Bank of America. So, and there are many, and I'll take questions, but the one thing I do want to say is fraud, cyber theft is rampant. They're smart people. If they can hack into the FBI and shut down Fulton County, they can do it to all of us, and they are. So we can't stop it right now. I can't. Now, I also want to address e-record. Actually, e-record is probably safer because we take them over the counter in person via USPS mail, UPS, FedEx, and we don't have a way of seeing that person, but we are required by law to record it. E-record, however, I require verification now, and so we do have IP addresses. They have to register an account and they have to pay. So we have some way of tracking them through e-record, either through their payment method, a credit card, a phone number, and definitely an IP address.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That is amazing. In order to move forward and get through the program, I want to ask some other questions. And
can I make one more thing, because this is the most important part. I just wanted to give some context around
yes, ma'am.
What everyone is hearing, and that is we can't stop it, but we can make you aware. And that is to register your property through FANS, Fraud Alert Notification System. And you can register multiple counties, multiple properties. And what that does is the moment something hits your deed, a lien, and it could be even you. And if it's you, you ignore it. But if it's not you, your first call should be to 911 and your second call should be to me. Because in a day's time, I'm able to go in and say, okay, let me pull it out and check it out. And because fraudsters, they are going to try and beat every security thing you put in place. But when you know about it in enough time, see, these homeowners that were evicted, they were not even aware of this until months later. And so the months later, it becomes extremely difficult and costly for the property owner to make any changes, to do anything. And so given that, but finding out immediately is a game changer. Then you never even have to go into the whole dispossessory situation.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Because there's nothing you can address the default. And then when you get letters in the mail, like they got the letter saying something about your loan, Well, if you know you did not take out a loan, make a phone call and say, I did not, before it gets into the dispossessory and eviction realm of your property.
Okay.
But sign up. It's on my the link is on my website, which is dksuperiorclerk.com, or you can go to the Georgia Superior Court Clerks Cooperative Authority, gsccca.org, and register your property. And at least that way you will be notified as soon as something hits your deed.
We appreciate that,
Thank
Madam
you.
Clerk. This is amazing information. There's so many things going on in the chat. I'm gonna go to our next question. That was fantastic. I want to ask Dr. Angela Washington, what are some of the common ways a person's identity can be stolen, just to come behind that?
Well, it's really easy, and a lot of times it's us. How many times have we gotten a text message on the phone about your bank and you click on the link? Or, we throw away mail that has our name, our address, our date of birth, and sometimes even our social security number attached to it. Or if you're old school and you're still mailing your bills off and you put in checks and you're using mail drop boxes. Or sometimes we share our personal information. If you go to the airport or if you're at a restaurant and you get on public Wi-Fi, those are all non-secure networks. And sometimes even the games we play on Facebook, we don't really think about those things when it comes to identity theft, but those are just a small amount of ways that people can obtain our information. So it's always important, if you get those text messages saying that it's your bank that needs to check on some transactions, don't respond to the text message. Call your bank, because if it is truly your bank, they're going to know exactly what you are speaking of, and you can handle the situation that way. Always get a shredder. Don't throw away anything, not even the junk mail. Always peel your name and your information off of that before you just throw it in the trash, because there are some people that pride themselves on stealing your identity. And once it's trash, that's exactly what it is. It's free game for them. And that's exactly what they do, to go through our trash and see what they can find to obtain our identities.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Excellent. I like to move over because I'm trying to keep these continuity of these conversations. It's very good information. Thank you, all the panelists. Stephanie Singleton, can you tell me, what is cybersecurity and how does it intersect with identity theft that leads to deed fraud?
Yeah, so think of cybersecurity as having a lock and a security system for all of your digital devices. So for example, your laptop, that means you've got a password on it to protect anyone from being able to access it without your permission. So essentially, cybersecurity is about protecting your assets to keep the cyber criminals from accessing your information. So this has been my area of focus for quite a while, and this conversation is very, very timely. What we're seeing is a lot of cyber criminal activity that is conducted via phishing. Now, you heard Dr. Washington speaking earlier about links and malicious links that people click on. I do want to take a moment to talk about that right now. So if we're ready with the presentation, we're going to hop right into it because I don't want to take too long. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk through phishing tonight, and we're going to give you some tips on how to spot phishing and protect yourself from that. So if we could go over to the next slide, just really quickly. Phishing is when someone sends you an email and they're trying to trick you into giving up your information, plain and simple. There are different methods of trying to gather your information, which include SMS phishing, meaning, as Dr. Washington said earlier, you're getting a text message with a fake link requesting your information. And there's also ways in social media. So you've got to be careful on those. As we head into the next slide, we're going to begin speaking about 7 major red flags for you to look for. Let's go quickly to the next slide. The very first one, you want to look for that urgent or threatening language. Sometimes you'll see them say, you've got to change your password now. You got to send payment now. That language is to try to elicit an emotional response from you. Don't do it. You heard Dr. Washington a minute ago. I think she saw my presentation ahead of time. But what you'll want to do, call that organization. If it says it's your bank and they say you have 24 hours, okay, don't respond back to that email, call them, okay? Number 2, suspicious sender information. And what does this mean? You may see that the email name says Bank of America, But if you hover over the name, don't click it, hover, you'll see that it has an email address that has nothing to do with Bank of America. So a key tip, hover your mouse over the email address, don't click it. And once you hover, you'll see a little tag pop up and it'll show you the real address behind it. The third item I want you to look for or to be aware of is that an organization will typically never ask you for personal information via email. They're not going to ask you for your username and password. They're not going to ask you for your logins to different social media sites, to your social security number, anything like that. The only exception is typically if you've initiated that contact with someone that you are confident that this is their information. Okay. The next item you want to look for is horrible grammar. Typically, you'll see grammar that just does not make sense. That should be one of your main flags that you'll be able to identify quickly. And on the next slide, we're going back to suspicious links. Again, do not click the links if you're not sure of them. This includes whether it's via your cell phone or an email. Again, you want to hover over the link, don't click it, and behind it, you'll see whether or not it's a website that makes sense or not. So again, in our Bank of America example, and I'm not sponsoring Bank of America, it's just the first thing that came to mind. But if it were an email from Bank of America, and if they were saying click this link, what you do is you hover your mouse, and if you see that it does not begin with bankofamerica.com/something else, that is a very good indicator that this is a malicious site. Typically, you'll see the organization's name before the .com. So keep that in mind. Item number 6, generic greetings. Typically, organizations do not say, hello, customer, greetings, customer. They're going to call out your name because they know you. They've done business with you. And in our example, Bank of America, if you have an account with Bank of America, they're going to say, hey, Donetta, we have a question for you. They're not going to call you just a generic name. So keep an eye out for that. And then finally, you'll often see something that may seem too good to be true. Oftentimes you think of the African Prince scam, but there are other scams out there that are less suspicious and seem a little bit more realistic. But if it's coming out of nowhere and you have no clue where this has come from, don't access that information. It's typically a scam and you don't want to fall for that scam. So we're going to do a little exercise really quickly. You all have been very engaged. So we're going to drop some answers in the chat. So on the next slide, I'm going to show you an email and I want you to spot the red flags for me. So as you're looking at this, tell me what is it that you see, okay? That is a red flag for you. So I'm reading this email. It's telling me, hey, dear member, in an effort to safeguard your information, helps to actively protect and monitor your account in multiple ways. So I'm already looking at it thinking this sounds a little off, but I'm going to continue reading it. Not sure. I'm going to hover over that link. And as I hover over it, the email or the website address is go log in and it's something completely random. It has nothing to do with Navy Federal. So have we spotted the red flags? What do you think? I'll give you 3 seconds to drop some answers. 1, 2, 2.5, 3. Let's go to the next slide. So we've got our red flags. We're going to call them out on the next slide. So first, my bank usually refers to me by name. I don't see my name. All right. My bank usually calls me if they suspect that there is some type of compromise with my account. They will usually either call me or send me a text message that I have verified and I have accepted. We also see the bad grammar. We see further down in the email that there's that urgent language telling me that I've got to do this now. And then finally, when I hover over the link, I see an incorrect URL. All right. So let's try for one more. We're going to go over to the next slide and we're going to review this Amazon. So what do we see? What are we thinking? We're looking at the grammar. We're seeing that it doesn't make sense. We're looking at the email address that it came from. We're seeing all these things that just don't make sense. We're going to hover over the URL to see what's back there, all that good stuff. So let's go to the next slide. So I've ordered from Amazon so much that they do refer to me by name. So I should see my name. I'm looking at the email address. It has nothing to do with Amazon or any organization that I know that they've emailed me from. And the links are suspicious. So I want to congratulate you all on being able to identify some red flags. And just remember on the next tab that you have an option, or excuse me, on the next slide, you have an option to report phishing attempts. Typically, you'll see a button that says report phishing or report spam. Press that button. It helps organizations and email providers protect other members because they'll now have that in their repository and they can monitor to make sure that no one receives that email. And so finally, I just want you to remember, pause before you pause, then think before you click. Be skeptical of emails that are too good to be true or urgent. Think before you click, and remember to hover and trust your instincts. You know how your organizations typically interact with you, so follow those guidelines regularly. Okay? So with that, I'm going to close it out. I want you to remember to protect yourself from phishing. I want you to remember some of these key tips that we just mentioned. They're very quick and very easy for you to partake in to help protect yourself and your information. And as you can see, we've got a one-pager to help you remember those key tips. If you'd like to download it, it is available for you. Thank you so much, Donetta.
Thank you, Sarah Singleton. I would like to now move over and ask the questions that we're all talking about as identity theft and how to protect yourself from phishing. I want to ask, how can a consumer protect themselves from identity theft?
Well, I'll speak to that. The freeze your credit reports. A lot of times, if you're not actively doing something with your credit, refinancing, making a big purchase that requires a credit inquiry, contact all 3 major credit bureaus and freeze your credit reports. And then that way, when someone does do an inquiry, you will be notified.
And mentioning credit, I know, Breana, you work with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta. What do you have for tips on as it relates to credit and identity theft and fraud?
Yes, absolutely. I was going to add to that. So in addition to freezing your credit, you should also invest in identity protection. So Identity IQ, for example, is an amazing website. They provide complete credit and identity protection, such as identity theft insurance up to $1 million. They provide credit reports and scores depending on the level of membership you sign up for. You can get a credit report either monthly or quarterly or annually, but that way you can keep your eyes on your credit report in order to capture or catch any suspicious activity immediately. They provide real-time credit monitoring. So if any suspicious activities happen, they will alert you and provide you an email with details. And that way you can start your research and determine whether it's indeed theft or fraud in any type of way. And last but not least, they're also a part of the dark web monitoring. And so you get notified if your information is involved in a safety breach or a data breach. And so that way, so now you are paying for a membership and they're actively monitoring your report on a monthly, quarterly, or annually basis. Again, whichever membership you sign up for. But I think that's an amazing protection. And also considering that insurance that it provides, it just gives you a peace of mind for sure.
Definitely need a peace of mind as it comes to my identity. And I'm sure our other community leaders and guests thinks the same. Great information. What course of action do I take if my identity is stolen? Can any of the panelists answer that?
Sure. I can answer that question. Obviously the initial reaction is to panic, but like any type of drill, you have to have a process. Just speaking personally, having elderly parents who I have to check in on time to time. I have to check my parents' cell phone. I have to check their mail to kind of see what's going on because they're enjoying, their senior years. They're not looking over their shoulders. So, as a concerned child, sometimes you do have to check in on your elderly parents or loved ones from time to time. But getting back to the question, the first step is to, again, if you have those insurances or those fail safes in place, yes, go to your LifeLocks or your credit freezes. Make sure that they're in place. Making sure that, again, that whatever service you may be paying for is actually working on your behalf in those situations. Another thing you can do is contact your creditors. Ameris Bank is a community bank. I can count numerous times when I'm on a group email for the Fayetteville, Georgia branch office, where we get an email alert stating that, have this customer come in because we've seen multiple attempts to access their accounts. Doesn't have anything directly to do with me, but it's an all points bulletin for the bank employees that someone is trying to threaten or to attack someone's account. So definitely contact your creditors, file a police report. I think ultimately, it seems like, well, what are the police going to do in this situation? But Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian, they'll want to note your credit file, at least that you've done your due diligence and notating that, hey, look, there was a crime committed. They'll put that alert on your credit. So if it happens to go any further than that, at least it's noted on your credit, and some additional security measures can be taken place to kind of help protect your identity.
May I add to that as well, really quick? The Federal Trade Commission, they recommend for us to also go to identitytheft.gov, because a lot of times this can feel overwhelming. It feels like a lot that's happening. You don't know where to start. Identitytheft.gov is the federal government's one-stop resource to give you a report and to recover from identity theft. So I'll stop there because I have a 2-year-old in the background and I don't want to be unprofessional. But identitytheft.gov, you just plug in what happened and they will literally give you a report with steps to take, such as calling the company, placing a fraud alert, or placing that freeze on your credit report. And then when you print out the report that the identitytheft.gov website gives you, you can also use that in your police report as well. So should be a helpful tool.
I would like to add to that as well. Well, I'm glad Mr. Duff said, what can law enforcement do? So here's some of the things that we can do. Once you feel like you have been victimized by identity theft, just like Mr. Duff said, please file your police report immediately. Any type of documentation that you may have, emails from your bank, you start getting mailers saying thank you for your purchase of a fur coat or jewelry, things that you have never ever purchased or don't own. Please have all of those things with you. Now, I can say from a law enforcement perspective, there is something that you can do. There is an identity theft supplement worksheet where you can put your information into the National Crime Information Center. However, the thing about that is it is password protected. So say, for instance, if you get pulled over or somebody checks your ID, if your information has been added to the National Crime Information Center through this supplemental worksheet, that officer is going to ask you for that password to make sure that somebody is not utilizing your name. And I can speak to that personally because as a law enforcement officer, it happened to me. I wasn't paying attention. I took one of those calls I should not have taken and I panicked. So I immediately did my report. And because I am a police officer, they granted me the grace of doing this supplemental form. So now if anybody tries to give law enforcement my name and my date of birth, it's going to come back identity theft alert, and they're going to ask that person for that password. So that is an option. And also with those incident reports, it goes to detectives. One thing about scammers, there's always going to be a paper trail. There is always going to be a paper trail. So always stay on top of that and stay on top of that detective that may be assigned to your case. Any information that you may receive related to this particular identity theft incident, always forward that up. But we do catch them from time to time. It takes a while because it's tricky. Even with AI now, people are able to do so many different things to cloak themselves, mask themselves, voice over IP phone numbers, cloning phone numbers. There's so many different ways to do that. But we are sometimes successful in tracking those people down and prosecuting them.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Excellent information. I'm taking these notes too. I got partners in time that's taking notes for me. This is good information. I have another question I want to pose to the panel. And this question is, what resources are available in the community for emergency support if I'm evicted from my property? I mean, that's devastating for a homeowner. If you're, just imagine you went to the grocery store, you come home and all your assets have been placed on your front lawn because you've been victimized.
That's a very tough question to answer because like the clerk said earlier, it's foreclosure is a process, and it doesn't happen. A thief has to, not only be a thief but be patient, because if someone files an erroneous deed, they won't take possession of that house within 30 days. It truly is, give or take, depending on the county and of course the state, about 90 days for the process to take place from when they've defaulted on their loan, whether it was a first mortgage or a second mortgage. Again, it does have to be posted in the local paper, right? But then you think about it, an unassuming individual who knows that they own their home free and clear, they're not reading, if they're reading the AJC, and nothing against the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but are they looking through there to see if their home is listed? Probably not. But the old saying, 1 ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. The panelists mentioned all the processes, the insurances, if you will. We have insurance on our homes, our cars, our bodies, our health. We need to start insuring our real property as well. So in those unfortunate situations, we're being alerted, prior to the 11th hour, which again is just going to create a lot of stress and strife on a unassuming homeowner.
And Mr. Duff, I think you answered this question, but I wanted to ask you the process and the timeline before the foreclosure of property. You said about 90 days, and from what Madam Clerk shared with us, that people have to really get. Is it 90 days or up to 6 months? Do you have any more clarity on that? Just because, yeah I'm curious.
Yeah, generally speaking, and this is just from a mortgage loan origination standpoint. Things happen to people where they miss a payment that's technically considered a 30-day mortgage late. If God forbid, the next month, this is March, if we're going into April, I missed my mortgage payment April, I missed my mortgage payment May, and then come the month of June, I'm technically pre-foreclosure by definition in June if I miss 3 consecutive monthly payments. Now, if I miss one, make one, miss one, make one, technically you're buying yourself some time. But in these cases, these crooks are basically taking out second mortgages or cash out refinances, whatever their intent or purposes are, and they're not making a single payment. They're basically taking the money and running, leaving, again, that unassuming homeowner there just to, live their normal life until they get the notices on the door or see their home listed for auction in the newspaper.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Duff.
You're welcome.
I'd like to give it a moment with our panelists. It's been such a healthy discussion. We could talk about this a long time. We have a lot of people that are on Facebook, that are on YouTube, they have really came up to the call of action, and they want answers. They want things to be done, and they want to be safe for their family, their friends, and their community. And I know you, as leaders and activists in your own rights, because you're here tonight, may have some final words. And so I want to give it just a few minutes before we have to move to some Q&A to if there is anything that we didn't cover that you think we should share with our community.
I'll go first. I think it's important that we do all that we can to protect our information. I know that sometimes, we don't really think about it when you get junk mail and stuff like that in the mail. We just kind of carelessly cast it to the side or throw it out when we're doing our spring cleaning. We have to ensure that we are doing everything we can to protect ourselves, because as we've seen in all these different news stories from different people in different walks of life, it becomes very easy for someone to harness your identity or your deed and take the things that you have worked very hard for. So I think it's very important that we stay vigilant and mindful of how we are disposing of our personal information.
Thank you, Dr. Washington.
From a cybersecurity perspective, I think what I would want to really, really reiterate is just be careful with the emails. There are a lot of very, very simple tips that you can take to kind of verify that very quickly. Again, hover over the links. Don't click, hover first just to verify. And then if you're not sure, call them directly. Go to their website, go down to the bottom where it says contact us, find a phone number for that organization and call them directly if you're not sure. If it just seems suspicious, trust your gut and contact them directly to verify.
Thank you, Sora Singleton.
I'd like to make a suggestion for everyone listening. If you happen to have one of these devices, sometime this evening, Google your name and, or your loved one's name. And if you're shocked or concerned or alarmed by what you see comes up, if you see date of births, former street addresses, email addresses, places of employment, take action. Cell phones, this is truly your digital footprint. And you want to try to minimize that as much as possible, because if you can just simply Google your name, so can a crook, right? And they can get a lot of information or get the jump on getting information just by putting in your name, putting in your street address. There's so much information online. And again, if you're not comfortable sleeping at night, knowing that all your information's out there, look into some of the resources and tools that can kind of help you shrink or minimize the amount of your personal information that's out there. I'll give you one quick one. It's called Delete Me. I'm not a sponsor or endorser of this resource, but my family and I, we just recently moved, and I hadn't been in my home 30 days. And again, these are recorded. It's public information. So any crook knows that I moved from one side of town to the other, has my street addresses, my full name, my date of birth, all of that was out there. So I took action. I paid an annual fee of just north of $100 and, slowly started to reduce the amount of personal information that people can find about me and my family online.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Duff.
Yes, and from a financial counselor perspective, Mr. Duff, I'm so grateful that you mentioned that we have to look at this as an investment. So I know sometimes we may not want to pay for memberships. We may not want to pay that $100 fee or $99 fee, whatever it may be. But just remember, we have insurance on our cars, we have insurance on our apartments, we have insurance on our homes. Of course, we're here to talk about home ownership. And so don't be afraid to put insurance on your identity. And also don't be afraid to ask for help. This stuff can feel very overwhelming and it could be a lot to think about all at once. And so make sure you find a professional that's there to support you. Again, I am with the Urban League of Greater Atlanta and my focus is on credit. But if something pops up on your credit that is not yours, of course, we have to dig into the identity theft issue. So I'm a resource for you. If I cannot help you or the Urban League of Greater Atlanta cannot help you, then we will make sure we can find another professional to walk you through the process so it doesn't feel too overwhelming.
Thank you, Sora Curry. We appreciate that. Okay, this is fantastic. I'm so grateful for all the panelists. We're going to transition because I see the chat. It is it's blazing full of questions here. So I'm going to bring back to the stage Johnny Cruz Craig, who's our chair of social action. So, Johnny.
Good evening, everyone, and good evening to all the panelists. This has been amazing. And as our Danetta said, the chat is on fire. Okay, so we have some questions and some comments that we want to bring forth to the panelists. And so when I read the question, if you have a insight on it, please start talking and we'll make sure you get over here to the big screen so that those that ask those questions can get those answers, because there's a lot of engagement. I believe our community is really understanding. They're becoming aware of what's going on and they have questions. So we're going to start with the first question to our panelists tonight. And it says, we know that there's a system, that fan system that was talked about to sign up for alerts. What if, you sign up for the alerts and that means you can get alerted after something happens, maybe with your deed. What do the community do to see if something has happened already before they signed up for the alerts, right? So anybody want to speak to that? What can we share with our constituents, our community members on how they can check right now to see if they've been a victim? And I know, I'm sorry, Danetta, we maybe have talked, and is it just calling the deeds office?
In fact, it is calling the deeds office. And then also, when I believe through our alert system that we've actually played on the ticker, you can actually, when you go in there register, you can see if there's anything there as well.
Okay, thank you. So the next question would be, from your lens as subject matter experts, what are the intersections of deed fraud, identity theft, economic development, and social action? From your lens, from your subject matter expert lens, where do you see the intersection of all of this stuff that we've talked about regarding economic development and social action? Because we heard about some legislation. We heard about laws that's in place that's keeping people from having to show their true identity. So what are your thoughts?
I think we need to change the law so that IDs are required. I think a lot of times the information is not readily available. So when you don't know how to navigate the process. And that's why forms like this are very important, because a lot of people wouldn't know about going to the deed office just to inquire, or even the fans link where we've all registered. I think I've gotten everybody in my family that owns a home to register, on that, just so we can stay on top of that, because I'll be the first to admit I didn't know about it prior to us preparing for this forum. So I think knowing those resources and having people that are willing to share and not gatekeep what's out there so that people can do all that they can to protect themselves is where all of this begins to intersect. Knowledge is power, and we have to know what's going on around us.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, but more importantly, knowledge is power, but sharing the knowledge and applying the knowledge is even more powerful. So I hope everyone listening takes that and takes the action to go sign up for these alerts, share with everyone in your network. And I know Mr. Duff shared with us about our elderly parents. If you look at what we've seen this evening, there's a commonality. They're African-American and they're elderly. So what Mr. Duff brought up is a huge component of what we need to take away tonight, because we got to be the keepers of our elderly, of our seniors. So let's move on to some other questions we had. And you see across the bottom that deed awareness alert. That's what we really want you to do. And you'll see it in the chat. Make sure you click that link and you do it. Now, to some of the questions that we had coming in from our audience. What is the correct process to change your last name on your deed? Can anyone speak to that? I know the clerk isn't here, but anyone have any insight? And if not, maybe it's calling the clerk's office and asking that question. Anybody have anything else they would want to say to that one?
I can speak to that. Being recently married, my wife changed her name on her social security card, driver's license. And then from that point, all your legal documentation is in place. And then you want to go to your clerk's office, volunteer your identification. Again, it's not a state requirement, and here in Georgia that you provide, your ID, but volunteer it and make sure everything gets recorded accordingly. You don't want to leave anything to chance. So driver's license and social security card if you want to make those changes official.
Awesome. Thank you for that insight. The next question says, can you all address the effects of AI in the deception of deeds, fraud, and identity theft? Who wants to take that one?
I will take the AI portion of it, but I'll leave the deeds portion to those who are experts in that area. We have seen a rise in AI, and folks are able to create documents that look real, right? They're able to create things that can make them take on someone else's identity. So this is something that I wanted to hop in on that original question on the intersection of all of these things. For me, it's creating a voice and being a champion for how we are managing and monitoring all of these technological changes with relation to information about ourselves, right? We are seeing that AI has the ability to make people who they aren't. And this is having large implications in so many different areas, whether it's healthcare, whether it's deeds, whether it's just gathering someone else's identity. So for me, it's about leading the charge for respectful and a respectful way to move forward to allow AI to flourish, because there are positives about it. But we do have to have some safeguards and some protections in place for our constituents, for the people, to protect us from those who wish to do harm against us. So from my perspective, I do see AI having a negative impact on that. But if we are champions and we are social action, we can be the ones who enact change on that level with regards to how we move forward with AI.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Stephanie. Now we had another question too. Do you recommend authenticator applications? If you could speak to that.
I was really happy when I saw this question. I'm going to take it up a level. Yes, authenticator applications, but wherever possible, when your account requests that you turn on multi-factor authentication or MFA, turn it on. What that is it's a second way for you to prove you are who you say you are. Your first way is to use your username and your password. And then if you have MFA turned on, you'll get either a text message and they'll ask you, hey, what's the number in that text message? Or if you have an authenticator app, they'll typically say, hey, press here so that I know that this is you. But the key is it's on something you have, your device. So as Mr. Duff said earlier, your phone is very pivotal to our everyday lives. So if you have the opportunity to either implement or use an authenticator app or turn on multi-factor authentication with any of your accounts, do it. Absolutely do it.
Thank you so much. So we're going to move forward to the next question. Is LifeLock enough coverage for ID protection, or is a combination of ID protection services needed?
I think a combination is always great. You can't protect yourself too much, so I would definitely overestimate versus underestimating.
Good. Thank you so much. Next question is, someone says, how do we get the sub form? Who talked about the sub form? Anybody recall that?
I think they're referring to the supplemental identity theft form that I spoke of. You can only utilize that form if you are utilizing a police incident report identifying yourself as a victim of identity theft. If you have identified yourself and filing a police report, you can ask the responding officer if they are aware of the form. If not, when your information gets forwarded over to a detective, you can follow up with them and ask them for the identity theft supplemental information worksheet. They should know exactly what that is, and they will walk you through the process of filling that form out. But that form is only utilized if you are filing an incident report and identifying yourself as a victim of identity theft.
Thank you, Dr. Washington. Next question. How many times can you check your credit report per year?
You can check your credit report as often as you like. It would never hurt when you check your credit report yourself. That's a soft inquiry. And a way to remember that is whenever you give your social to someone else to see if they'll approve you for something, that's when it hurts you. But if you're checking it for your own knowledge, then you can check it as often as you like.
Thank you so much. Y'all see, I'm putting the questions up because I want us to get through them, and I want you to see them as we're getting to them. So the next one is about shredding. Any other recommendations about discarding shredded materials?
I think the shredding, the material is so minute, someone would probably lose their eyesight trying to put all their paper back together. So I think, just having that shredding, it would be sufficient. If you don't have a personal shredder at home, my suggestion is just go to Walmart or get one off of Amazon. They are a world to have. And then when you get those pre-approved credit offers and all those things that you are interested in, just go ahead and drop them in the shredder.
Thank you so much. Dr. Washington, the next question also says they're asking for the website. I'm not sure if it's the same one you were talking about with the sub form.
Yes, ma'am. That's the same thing. It comes straight through law enforcement.
Gotcha. So y'all get that. It's straight through law enforcement. So if it happens to you, you got to do your reporting. You got to do all those necessary steps so you can get to that particular part. What was the website to add fraud alert on your home? That is rolling across the bottom on the chat. And if we can get that put in the chat again for the viewers so they can simply just click it and go do it. Next question. What about the mortgage company if you still have a mortgage? They don't ask questions when they see a second mortgage taken on that property in another name?
That's a great question. And I'll be honest, there are owner's title policies and there are lender's title policies. If you have a mortgage loan, a first mortgage, whether it's FHA, VA, conventional, and you're paying that mortgage to a lender, there's lender's title. So, again, this being kind of more or less a new crime, and from my capacity, I don't have the depth of knowledge to kind of explain how that works. But if Ameris Bank is holding your first mortgage and Joe Blow thief comes along to file a second mortgage to do either cash out or a home equity line of credit, that goes through, that lender won't be able to foreclose because we're in first lien position. So a whole lot of other segments of fraud would have to take place in order to trump, if you will, for lack of a better term, a first lien holder. I think in some of the instances we've seen, those victims own their homes free and clear, or they may have owed little to nothing. I'm really not quite sure of all the specifics, but if you have a first lien, there's no way that a second lien holder can then come and basically, if it goes to foreclosure, it's going to go to foreclosure with the primary lender. And I think at that point, the cat is out the bag, and fraud would kind of be identified at that point. But that's a great question. We'll have to, hopefully won't have to see how this plays out. Hopefully the laws, this being an election year, hopefully we'll get some people in place that will make this a priority to kind of help protect the citizens of the counties as well as the state.
That's right, because we are social action. Yes, sir, you are absolutely correct. The legislation is something we need to pay attention to, and we need to understand who understands what's going on with this and what they are standing on, so that we'll know, who we want to support in those spaces. So it's a question on the screen that I think you can answer to. Is there a way to remove your name from Google? And then we're going to move forward. Do you anybody know? I don't know. I don't know that. Is there a way to remove your name from Google?
Yes, there are ways for you to be able to remove yourself from searches. So Google has a removal tool that removes outdated info, but they also have a space where they can remove personal information. It's a personal information removal tool. I'll try to find the link to that website or the space where they offer that. You also have Mozilla Firefox, which is another web browser. They also have a privacy subscription service that constantly scans the web, and it'll notify you if they find information about you, and you can request to have it removed. There, it is a subscription service, and it is fairly new, but they're doing a great job in the privacy space. So there are options for that.
All right, thank you so much. So we did have a question. This will be on YouTube and Facebook on the Stone Mountain Lithonia pages. It will live there. You can come back and watch it as much as you want. You can share the link with everybody in your community, your friends, and your family. Then lastly, I think this is the last question we're going to end on. Can the foreclosure process be stopped once it begins?
That is a fact. Assuming it's an erroneous foreclosure, there are judges in place. I think the burden of proof, unfortunately, is going to lie on the homeowner. But I believe it was either in the video or maybe it was a clerk who mentioned, getting an attorney. Some of these services that are offer protection up to X amount of millions of dollars. So the home title lock service, the deed title lock services, they're there to help you fight or support you with the legal cost. And I would think, as long as the burden of proof is, or you can prove that this is a erroneous foreclosure process, you should be able to stop it.
Thank you so much. So again, thank you to all of our panelists. We're going to invite our second vice president to the screen to bring us some reflections as we close out. So we're going to all leave her with you to help us summarize everything up and give us some call to actions, and we'll be back.
Thank you. Thank you. I was sitting here, I got kind of choked up hearing some of those stories. Friends and neighbors, as we wrap up our time together today, I just want to say thank you, a big thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been an hour or so well spent diving into something as important as keeping our homes safe from deed fraud. It's like we've all come together for a neighborhood watch, y'all. But instead of flashlights, we've armed ourselves with knowledge and understanding. Owning a home is more than just a financial investment. Y'all know that. It's where we celebrate big milestones and where we find comfort on those not so good days. It's where we plant our gardens and watch them grow, just like our families. For many of us, it represents years, tears of hard work, saving up and dreaming big. It's a piece of our personal story, something so precious that the thought of someone trying to tarnish it with fraud just feels wrong, and it feels incredibly personal. And this is why losing your home is such a drain on your mental health and wellness. Today, we've taken a big step together to ensure our stories, our homes aren't just seen as targets by those looking to take advantage of us. By coming together, we're sharing tips, we're sharing resources. The comment is lit. The comment section is lit on Facebook, on YouTube. You know, we're not just neighbors, we're a community that looks out for one another. And Dr. Washington said, knowledge is power, but we're going to put that knowledge to some action. So y'all get ready, get your devices ready, get your pencils ready, because I'm going to give you 4 call to actions. I'm going to give you time to pause and get that down, because I'm just not here representing SM-LAC leadership. I'm your neighbor. I'm your fellow neighbor who deeply cares about you and our community's well-being. So the conversation doesn't end here. Y'all ready? We got 4 call to actions. Number 1, I want you to click on that link in the chat, excuse me, or click on the QR code that's shown on the screen. I want you to sign up for those deed fraud alerts. I want you to do it by your name. If you're married, I want your maiden name. You can do it by your married name. You can do it by your address. Sign up. You can do variations. Y'all got it? Got some time? You ready for the next one? Okay, we're going to the second call to action. Y'all ready? I want you to check on your voting status. Why are we a state that doesn't require ID for changing information on your titles and on your deeds? Let's make sure we get people who in office are going to advocate for us, our needs and our wants, okay? We need somebody that's going to speak for us. Did y'all click on the link? You scan the QR code? We want to get and keep people in office who care about our welfare and our mental health. I said again, mental health and wellness. We're going to the third CTA. All right, get ready to download some resources. Go to the chat or look on the screen. I think you may have just clicked on the chat. I want you to download all those resources. These materials were created just for you in mind. You want to provide you with the insights and tools you need to protect yourself, okay? And your investments. My 4th call to action is I want you to learn about the All of Us research program. There is a link in the chat and there is a QR code on screen. You know, I've been talking about mental health and wellness. We can help partner with All of Us research because they are working on data that'll help us, the collective, figure out things about us, our community, Black and brown and yellow communities, understanding that our differences can lead to a better health outcomes for everybody. Everybody. How many call to actions do we have today? 4. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's clear that when we come together, we can change things, we can transform lives, we can transform communities. I'd like to invite Soror's Johnny and Danetta, if they have any final announcements, to please come to the stage.
And thank you so much, Sarah McCoy, for those great reflections and those call to actions, because y'all know what we are. What are we? We are social action. All right. So as we get ready to close, I want to share one of the events. Thank you again, Sarah McCoy. I want to share an event that's coming up. Our Aging Up Committee of the chapter is doing another event because this is so important. The Aging Up Committee is doing a golden hour, Protecting Your Pockets, a discussion on financial exploitation and prevention. It's April 18th. It is there. I don't see registration, but you can see the location so that you can join this conversation, right? So that is another call to action and an upcoming event for you as well. Now, we have something very important we need you to do. We're going to restate those CTAs, but we also need you to do our participant survey. And we're showing it to you now so that you can go ahead and get started on it as you finish listening to this program, okay? So you're going to see it come up in the chat. You have the QR code here. Please, please, please complete this. And then we're going to bring Sarah Danetta up to give us some closing remarks. And we're going to end with a video after she does that. So you can work on the survey as you listen. Sarah Danetta.
Thank you, Sarah, Johnny, Craig Cruz, Craig. This was an amazing program. We brought this program together collectively with social action, economic development, as well as the Aging Up, because we identified in our communities the impact that people of brown and Black, as well as any other skin tone as well. And what it was typically derived from is that we want to protect our community partners and families, and like Sora Shannon said, our neighbors. And so we want to make sure that everyone had the information and that we knew that in this election season that we can discuss it more broadly so that we can bring about change and put the responsibility back into our legislators so that they can put the right things in place that we can vote on them. But I want to thank everybody for coming out, and I want us to get the word out to communities. Please share, and care the recording of this. It's going to be on YouTube as well as Facebook. Tag your loved ones, friends, even if they're out of state. Send them the link, because a good friend of mine was in Illinois and she did the alerts, and she too received the alerts when something was filed against her deed. It was left by her parents as they had departed. So this is important for us to learn, just as one of those toolkits that's for life learn tools that you need to keep in close by. And I also want to make sure that you sign up for all the alerts, as Sora Johnny and Sora Shannon told us. And all of the resources that each presenter brought forth, please collect them through the chat and put them up in your community centers, at your schools, and your jobs, and share it at the church. It's Easter Sunday. Give some good news, right? And then we also want to make sure that the next steps is of helping to decrease the occurrences of any type of mortgage fraud and identity theft through education. So essentially, vote.
Yes.
Vote. And make sure that you vote for every election that we'll have this year. So it's very important. I recently took my young professional, never first time voter to the polls. And you know what they said? He said, we don't know about this on campus. So we want to make sure that we rally and we support our kids as they're young professionals coming into this world, to know that they have voting responsibilities and to make sure that they're doing the same as well. So I'm going to hand it back over to Sora Johnny, but thank you for joining us tonight.
Yes, thank you so much, Sarah Janetta. Thank you to everyone. And as Sarah McCoy said, we want to lift up, and don't forget to do that participant feedback. It's in the comment on YouTube and Facebook, so please get that done as we close out here. But we want to bring it back to, when this happens to you, it can affect your mental health. And we want to end with a video about the All of Us Research Program, because there's modules within this program, if you become 1 in a million, around mental health. And it helps us to gather more data, to make the data more diversified. And we got researchers out here accessing this diversified data so that we can get medicines that are for us. So as we close this out, and we talked about deed fraud, identity theft, think about your health and wellness in that space. I know I was told, as I bring up this video, there's I think it was an episode on SUV about a man who this had happened to, and it sent him in a spin wheel. And on that particular episode, he found out who did it to him, and he did the inevitable because he felt like he had the worst thing done to him, which he had. So let's think about that. Think about our health and wellness as we go to this video. Please don't leave without finishing up that participant feedback form. After the video, we are done. Y'all have a wonderful evening, and we're so grateful that you joined us on tonight.
My name is Jennifer J.J. Jones, and I serve as the program lead for the Black Week Letter Consortium, a signature program of the National Panelists Council. I want to thank you for joining us today to learn more about the All of Us Research Program, the national partnership with MPAC Divine Nine organizations, and how to become a participant in the All of Us Research Program. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself and share a little bit more about my why. Why am I a part of this transformational work? Well, a little bit about me. I'm in Dallas, Texas, and I've worked and been a part of the program as a participant of the All of Us program since May 2018. And my why for becoming a part of the program is because this work speaks to both my personal and my professional passions that I have for diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a Black American, as well as a woman, I've been underrepresented in medical research, and I know firsthand the barriers associated with building or rebuilding trust in communities that are hesitant to share their information, like the Black community. This is just something that we don't do. That is why it's important to offer presentations like this one to help provide a human element of conversation and explanation, so you can hear from me and my why. So let me tell you a little bit about my why. Just as we begin to start this program and working with the National Institutes of Health, I was re-diagnosed with breast cancer. Yes, the very day that we had our first meeting. And being a part of this program has opened up so much for me, so many questions that I now can ask my doctor. I've learned so much about myself and about my health. And I understand that there's disparities within health. And so part of me going through the cycle of me taking treatments and all the things that I had to go with my cancer, I asked questions because what I learned through this program is that most of our medications are based on an average white male. So I began to think about that as I'm going to treatments and they're telling me that I need to do all these different things for my cancer. They weren't working for me. And I began to question them. Well, why isn't it working for me? And then having this information from the All of Us research program, it was explaining that. It was explaining the why. So my history, my family has a history of cancer. My mother died of cancer. My father died of cancer. My brother died of cancer. My first husband died of cancer. His mother died of cancer. And I can go on and on and on. So my children, when I got cancer the second time, their frame of reference for cancer was death. But I needed to know the why. So when it came back, I had to have a genealogical test to see if it was hereditary. And it wasn't. Not only was it not hereditary, but I wasn't even susceptible to getting cancer. So why? Why did I get cancer? Because of this program, I understood the why for me. It was environmental. So this program looks at all these different aspects of you to understand why you get sick and why you don't get sick. The All of Us research program is a large research program hoping to gather data from 1 million or more people living in the United States to accelerate research and improve health. By taking into account individual differences in lifestyles, environment, genetics, researchers can uncover paths toward delivering precision medicine or individual care for all of us. So my thing was environmental. That explained it for me. And the more I'm a part of this program, the more I learn about my health, which has caused me to be a champion for my own health and for my family. Did you know that this program is led by the National Institutes of Health? Well, it is. And according to the NIH, only 10% of the population, our population, is included in health research. This is part of why I am here to share this information with you. My final ask for you today is to click the link in the chat to learn more how to create an account and enroll after completing your consent. So that's my ask for today. And also, if you want to learn more about some of the information and some of the programs and events that we have put on, BGLC had put on, we put on, you can actually go to the MPAC YouTube and Facebook, and there's so many videos, so much information there of all the things that we have presented to this point. So please get that information, go to the website, do the things, be one in a million, be the answer, a part of the solution to the questions. Just be a champion for your own health and your family health. We have to change the trajectory of health and research within our community. And it has to start with you, me, and all of us. So please, please get the information. Get the information. Go to the website and take the step toward the answer, because we want you to be one in a million. I'm one in a million, and I'm glad I did it. I needed to do it, not only for myself, for my children and their children and their children and their children, and on and on. Leave a legacy of good health. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day.